Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second distinguished lecture of the OUSL Distinguished Lecture Series. My name is Ishan Abeywadana. I'm the Director of the International Academic Relations Division here at the OUSL. The first lecture was delivered exactly 1 month ago by Dr. Som Naidu of Australia on getting published in high-impact journals. Today we have another distinguished professor, this time from the USA, who will speak to us about social media and how to integrate that into learning. Without any further ado, I would now like to call upon Professor Kamina Gunaratna, the Dean of the School of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, to introduce our speaker and chair this session.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to introduce our distinguished speaker today, Professor Charlotte Nirmalani Gunawardana. Dr. Charlotte Nirmalani Gunawardana, also known as Lani, was born in Sri Lanka. She obtained her bachelor's degree in English with honors from the University of Kelaniya in 1976. Dr. Gunawardana was awarded a scholarship from the American Association of University Women to study in the United States and completed a master's degree in teaching of English to speakers of other languages, TESOL, at the University of Kansas at Lawrence, Kansas in 1982. She completed her doctorate at KU with honors in 1988 and won the National University Continuing Education Association's Charles A. Wedemeyer Award for her dissertation entitled New Communications Technologies and Distance Education, a Paradigm for the Integration of Video-Based Instruction. After completing postdoctoral studies as a Kellogg Research Fellow at the University of Oklahoma, Dr. Gunawardana joined the University of New Mexico as an assistant professor of distance education and instructional technology in 1989. She won many awards at the University of New Mexico for excellence in teaching, research, and service, and was promoted to the rank of distinguished professor in 2014, the highest faculty title that the university bestows to only a few of the most prominent faculty who have demonstrated outstanding achievements and are nationally and internationally renowned as scholars. In her teaching and research, Dr. Gunawardana pursued her passion for distance learning, blending it with her keen interest in intercultural communications, which culminated in the co-edited book, Culture and Online Learning, Global Perspectives and Research, that was published by Stylus in 2014. She has published and presented extensively on distance education for over 25 years and has over 100 publications to her credit. Her research and scholarship has generated numerous invitations to deliver keynote addresses and conduct workshops at national and international conferences throughout the world, and requests to engage in consultancies to develop distance education projects for universities and national governments. In addition to her role as a senior academic at the University of New Mexico, she has directed U.S. federal research and evaluation grants for over $1 million. She currently serves as the lead evaluator for the National Institutes of Health-funded Native American Research Center for Health. In 2010, the White House appointed her to serve on the board of visitors for the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center at Monterey, California, to review the quality of academic programs in foreign languages. From 2009 to 2011, she served on the Scientific Commission of the Open University of Catalonia, Barcelona in Spain, to review the research mission of the university and its doctoral programs. From 2005 to 2006, she served as consultant to Intel Corporation to evaluate distance education programs offered by Intel's corporate university. Dr. Gunawardana has consulted in Mexico, Brazil, Norway, Portugal, and China, and looks forward to continuing her relationship with the Open University of Sri Lanka and other academic institutions in Sri Lanka. Ladies and gentlemen, today Dr. Gunawardana will be delivering a distinguished lecture on the topic, Developing Virtual Collaborative Learning Communities, Harnessing the Power of Social Media. This lecture will address how social media developed with mobile and web-based technologies, which enables user-generated content such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, forums, blogs, wikis, Skype, and cloud computing, can be utilized to create virtual learning communities that engage in collaboration and network problem solving to support future trends in distance education, in higher education. Dr. Gunawardena will also discuss a design model that supports a learning community spiraling process as it moves from a given socio-cultural context through discourse, action, reflection, and reorganization towards socially mediated metacognition. I now invite Professor Lani Gunawardena to deliver her lecture. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ayubowan, Vanakkam, hello. And a big hello to all of you out there in distance land, in the world. I heard that there were people participating in Australia and the Philippines perhaps, as well as in Sri Lanka. Thank you, Ishan, for giving me this opportunity to address this topic, which is actually one of my passions, developing virtual communities, whatever media you use. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how communities can be developed, why we need to develop them, how we can develop them, and how we can use the power of social media to do so. So first, I want to start with key trends that really are impacting higher education today. There are many, many trends, but I'm really going to focus on technology trends because that's what this talk is about. So I'm quoting from the Horizon report. It's the New Media and New Media Center's Horizon report published in 2014. They publish these reports every year. And they track what the trends are going to be in higher education related to technology. So the fast trends that they have reported in 2014 for the next 1 or 2 years are two aspects. One is the growing ubiquity of social media. This is the widespread use of social media. And the second one is the integration of online, hybrid, and collaborative learning. So my talk today is going to be on these two trends. The mid-level trends that they talk about for the next 3 to 5 years are rise in data-driven learning and assessment, because we have so much of data that we generate through online media. So there is a new field coming into being called learning analytics, where you can download a lot of data from these online learning systems and then analyze them. Shift from students as consumers to students as creators. Even the social media, what's nice about social media is that you can create content. The long-range trends for the next 5 or more years are agile approaches to change. I think we live in a world of constant change. And of course, the evolution of online learning to become really the mainstay of learning. Regarding online learning, which is really my major field that I work in, the exponential growth of online learning in the United States is really quite phenomenal. Our university started delivering a few courses, and by 2010 to 2011, we just, were delivering like 68% more of online courses. And now it has plateaued because, online has sort of become the mainstay of many of the programs. In our program, I teach in a program called Organization, Information and Learning Sciences, and we deliver our entire master's degree online. So let's talk a little bit about social media. What is social media and what is social networking? So social networking refers to social media sites such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, these are only just 3, where users set up a profile, create formal connections to people they know, communicate, and share preferences and interests. So this is a very brief definition of social media, and I'm sure many of you use social media. So I want a raise of hands. I want you to raise your hand if you use any type of social media. Okay, good. So everybody is familiar with different types of social media. The Horizon report says that social media is actually changing the way people interact. and present ideas and information, and also judge the quality of content and contributions. Almost 40% of the world's population regularly use social media, which is a pretty big percentage. One of the issues that has impacted its use is access. More than 1.2 billion people used Facebook regularly in 2013. Now, Facebook happens to be one of the most widely used social media platforms. Now, what is interesting is who uses it. Social media spans all ages and demographics. The fastest growing group on Facebook and Google Plus is 45 to 54 years. I'm sure this demographic surprises you because we think of users as young people. You know, we know the digital generation is here. So, you know, kids are all with a little phone in their hand or a tablet in their hand. We know that. But we don't quite realize that a large percentage of the more senior population are also using social media. In fact, when I go to the Apple store in my city in Albuquerque, a large number of people that I see are older, 50 and older, learning these new technologies. So the impact of these changes in scholarly communication and on the credibility of information still remains to be seen. So these are two issues. But it is clear that social media has found significant traction in almost every education sector. So I don't know to what extent social media is being used here, but I think in the developing world, we are really beginning to use social media to support learners in distance learning. Now let me briefly talk to you about, the power of social media, and I'm going to digress from the education field to the political field. If you saw what happened during the Arab Spring movement, this is when the governments were toppled in Egypt and Tunisia, they were mostly done through social media because social media gave people power and access. In Sri Lanka, we recently finished an election. How many of you actually was getting your news from social media, right? So social media actually, the candidates informed the population about their points of view through social media. All the little gossipy stories were coming through social media, and people were trying to determine whether they were authentic information or not. What is also interesting is when I was listening to the election results, I was waiting to see on TV what they were announcing. And then I suddenly realized, the Indian Prime Minister congratulating our new president when we hadn't even finished announcing the results. So there was some disconnect. Social media gave the information to me faster. So these are some of the benefits of social media, but there are also pros as well as cons. So the purpose of my talk today is to address three things. One is, why should we develop virtual collaborative learning communities? And the second one is, how can we harness the power of social media and social networking to develop virtual learning communities? And then what are the design considerations for developing virtual collaborative learning communities? So actually, what is important is to really look at the concepts behind why we do collaboration or why we engage in collaborative learning. Now, this has been a little bit difficult to implement in education systems that actually reward the individual and the individual's grades. Because collaborative learning is a technique and a skill that many organizations need today. So let's discuss the first question. Why should we develop virtual collaborative learning communities? The old skill set, before the information age, the most important thing was to know, to have knowledge. But the new skill set is to filter, prioritize, connect, negotiate, integrate, and create. And in order to develop these new skill sets, you really do need to have people work in collaboration. And I know that in this audience we currently have some of you from very different disciplines, from the sciences, from archaeology, from different institutions. And essentially when we have to solve the complex problems, for example, the water problem, or one of the problems in Sri Lanka that has really that is of great concern is the kidney disease that many farmers have experienced in the North Central province and other provinces. So this is a complex problem. How do you solve it? You need so many different minds. They need to interact. They need to filter, prioritize, connect, negotiate, integrate, and create solutions. So the new essential skill sets for today's society are negotiating meaning within teams or groups, creating new context-sensitive understandings, that is, understanding the context and providing the solution for that context, and producing novel solutions to real-world problems. So the ability to work effectively and collaboratively in online environments is an important 21st century skill. The United States has recognized this skill as such an important skill that now it has mandated that every student who graduates from high school should have completed at least one online course. Many students complete more than one, but they are requiring students to complete one online course. And of course, when they go into the universities, they will be taking courses online. But it's also interesting about what has happened within our university. I come from a traditional university, not an open university. The traditional university in the sense that we have been a face-to-face university that is also offering distance learning. What we have seen is that the huge demand for online courses from the population that lives right in the city. So 70% of growth of online offerings in 2010 were from people who lived in Albuquerque, not from so many remote areas. Okay, so what are the theoretical foundations or learning theory foundations that support collaboration? Okay, so I'm going back to the Russian psychologist Vygotsky's Mind and Society, Mind in Society, his book that was translated into English. And parallel to this, Brunner, who has been known for, discovery learning in the United States, has also been talking about the importance of learning collaboratively and socially. So Vygotsky in Mind in Society said, learning is socially and collaboratively mediated, and that higher mental processors have their origin in social processors. So this is the first time a psychologist is coming and saying we need to understand how people learn with each other and how people learn from each other. And he stated that individual development cannot be understood without reference to the social milieu in which the child is embedded. So for a child who lives in a rural area, the learning context will be quite different from a child who lives in an urban area. So therefore, understanding the social context is really important to furthering learning in these children. Vygotsky talked about another very important concept. It's called the zone of proximal development. And this concept really has implications for mentoring, because what the zone of proximal development says is that when you have a novice and an expert working together, so let's talk about the expert as the teacher and the novice as a student working together, the role of the expert is to mentor and coach the student so that the student comes to the level where the student can now take off on their own. And that's the zone. So a teacher who is mentoring needs to know when to withhold that mentoring so that the student can take over. Sometimes we have in our societies teachers who really want to have control of the learning process all the time. It's hard to let go. So therefore, what is critical in the zone is knowing when to reduce, step back, and when to have the person you mentored take off. The zone of proximal development also, and Vygotsky's theory also provided the foundation for socio-constructivist and socio-cultural theories of learning. So what is social constructivism? Social constructivism really is the theory that lays the foundation for collaborative learning. Social constructivism is the belief that knowledge is co-created by members of a group by a process of negotiation of meaning within the group. So knowledge is created within the group through that negotiation process between people who belong to that group. Another theory that has really influenced our learning and understanding of collaborative learning is the concept of distributed cognition. And in this idea, Hutchins in 1991, who wrote a book on distributed cognition, talked about he wrote a book called actually Cognition in the Wild. And in this, he talked about how the mind is not isolated from artifacts and from other people. So essentially what he's saying is that the cognition is distributed not only in the minds of people, but also in the artifacts that they use. And he studied how the crew of a ship actually makes it move, and how many people have to feed in information to make this ship move. And he talked about how the tools they use, such as a compass or a monitor on how the sea is behaving, all of that really helped the ship's captain and his crew to move the ship in the water. Another important concept that Johnson talked about was the fact that tools are more than just something to make a task easier. So the moment you tell a teacher to use a tool or to use a media, you think of that media as a tool to help you do a task. But what is important to remember is that these tools, they change your way of thinking and of approaching a task, and indeed the nature of the task itself, and can reap unimagined wider social changes. So for example, let's take the concept of a wiki, a social media tool, versus a word processor. Both of these tools enable us to develop collaborative documents, work together to develop collaborative documents. The word processor, you use usually the tracking feature to edit documents. In the wiki, you actually have a history of all the documents edited by people who use a wiki. And so the way you approach the task, the way you organize the task, and the way you work through the task is different because of the two media functions that are afforded by these media. Okay, another concept is the concept of group cognition. Stahl talked about group cognition, and he said that in small group collaboration, meaning is created across utterances of different people. Meaning that is created is not the cognitive property of individual minds, but a characteristic of the group dialogue. Result of collaborative knowledge building is group cognition, so that the group itself comes to an understanding. This is not group thing, that is everybody thinking the same way, but it is a negotiation process that helps a group to understand each other's thinking processes. And during the time that a group works together, sometimes a lot of changes happen because of different perspectives that are advanced in the group. So let's look at the concept of metacognition. Metacognition, many of you know, is one's awareness of thinking and the self-regulatory behavior that accompanies this awareness. So metacognition, in other words, is when we reflect on our own thinking and look at how we came to a solution. What did we do? How did we think through the process, etc. Socially mediated cognition was a term coined by Goose et al. In their work looking at students collaborating on mathematics problems. And he reconceptualizes metacognition as a social collaborative process generated by the reciprocal character of collaborative interactions, where mutuality is expressed through self-disclosure, that is talking about yourself, requesting feedback, and monitoring others, other monitoring. So when a group interacts with each other, there is a learning process that happens because you are also reflecting on your own thinking processes, why your thoughts were not accepted by the group, or what thoughts were, or what ideas the group took as important ideas and went forward with. So essentially what happens here is that we are moving from the expert-novice zone of proximal development that I talked about earlier to collaborative zone of proximal development between equal status participants. So now when we move into social media where everybody is equal, you're going to have more of the collaborative zone of proximal development where people connected to a network is really regulating each other, giving feedback to each other rather than expert-novice. Although in social networks you do have expert-novices relationship as well. Another concept related to social media is the concept of informal learning. Now, when we come to universities and when we learn, it's all formal learning. Our curriculum is planned, everything is set for us, and therefore we are expected to learn what is planned for us. But all of you know as academics that a lot of the learning that happens throughout our process or throughout our life is informal learning, that we haven't really been in an academic setting to learn that. So informal learning is any activity involving the pursuit of understanding, knowledge, or skill which occurs without the presence of externally imposed curricular criteria. And so social networks are great for enhancing what is called informal learning, learning that you didn't expect to happen. So next one. How can we harness the power of social media and social networking to develop virtual learning communities? Okay, so what are some characteristics of social networking that we engage in through the use of social media? Social networking is the practice of expanding knowledge by making connections with individuals of similar interests. I want to pause here and make you think about all the people you have connected with that you couldn't have connected with if not for these social networking sites. Practically all of us have made new friends, contacts, colleagues through social networking. Online spaces that can be customized to a large extent by their users. This is another very important thing. We can actually customize our pages. We can customize the content that we make available to others on social media sites. So here are some characteristics to think about. One is informal and collaborative learning. Social media really supports informal learning as well as collaborative learning, learning together. What is important is peer-to-peer communication now. Earlier on, in many of the media that we use, we had instructor to student communication. Now we have peer-to-peer communication through social media. Also bottom-up control rather than top-down control. So people who use social media have power because they can actually generate and share content. They are grassroots content creation systems because anybody, anywhere can create content and information. One of the things then you have to figure out is whether this information is accurate or not. One thing that's really great about social media is that you can involve community experts. So the expertise about a specific topic is not limited to your instructor. You can contact anybody in the field who is an expert and get their opinion. Very often I have doctoral students from all over the world asking me to give an opinion on their dissertation topic. Now they wouldn't have been able to do that unless we had different networks, the internet and networks. One thing that's really great about social media is real time and just in time. Just like the political example I gave you, the commercial entities are now using social media to market their products. So social media, just like Facebook, are used to market many products. And it's enabled knowledge exchange. So people are either willing to share, not willing to share, but people who use social media generally willing to share. And many people have lots of their opinions on there. So one of the things you have to be careful is to really decipher how credible the information is. Now collaboration often happens via mobile devices such as phones and tablets. So although we've been using computers for this, now more and more people are really going to use mobile devices to do this. So mobile networking is what's going to happen. So essentially many youngsters, or maybe all of us, carry our social life in our pocket. So you pull out your social media and your little phone, and there you go. You have all your contacts, you have your family involved, you have all your pictures. And so in the future, many students will use the mobile phone for collaboration. Now, this has design implications because if you're designing collaboration among your students, it's important that you take into account the interface of a mobile device. So, for example, I'm sure all of you are familiar with learning management systems such as Moodle. Moodle has a mobile app. So how Moodle looks in this mobile app is important because many people will access Moodle through this mobile app. Now, one of the apps that I really like is WhatsApp. And I don't know whether you know this, it's also called WhatsApp. It's a simple personal real-time messaging system. You can have group text chats, sharing photos, audio and videos, as well as sharing locations. So as you see in this, you can share video, you can share audio, you can share text, and it's immediate interaction. We have our whole family in this WhatsApp, and constantly we are being updated on people's activities. We live in different parts of the world, what we do, etc. So this is an excellent device for developing a collaborative learning community because it has all the tools you need to collaborate. When I was in Mexico, I was doing a workshop in Mexico in October, and they were telling me that they actually prefer to use mobile phones and WhatsApp for their collaboration because they can easily access it. Learning management systems are more difficult to access because universities have all kinds of security criteria imposed on them. And also students enjoy using it. So relationships are ultimately the lifeblood of social media, says Nolan. And so we are moving from handshakes to retweets. So if now somebody tweets you, you tweet back. You no longer shake the hand. So this is how people are actually increasing their networks. Today's web users are prolific creators of content and upload photos, audio, and video to the cloud by the millions. Another interesting concept is the concept of the cloud. No longer do we need to have physical supercomputers on certain locations. We can always rent cloud-based services. So many of the social media are also on the cloud. That means we don't know where it's located. It engages the learner because they can produce, they can comment on, they can classify, and these skills have become just as important as the more passive task of searching, reading, watching, and listening. So you can see that people who use social media are also engaged in developing skills of producing and creating, commenting on other people's work, and arguing about that, and then as well as classifying. Okay, I want to share some examples of the use of social media from my own work. So I have been using social media in different formats, and I thought it would be good to tell you about some of my projects. A fairly recent project that one of my graduate students, Elizabeth Watson, and I did was to develop a cross-cultural informal science collaboration through social media between a school in the US and in Nepal. Now, what we did was, first of all, we connected the two schools. They were both private schools, and therefore they were easier to get access to, especially the school in Nepal. And so what we did was, each school had green clubs or environmental clubs. And so what we did was, because we had to do this project outside the regular curriculum, we looked at the environmental clubs as a good way to develop this cross-cultural connection. So high school students created social presence and interacted with each other during our initial Skype meeting that we conducted between the schools. Nepal and the USA have different time zones, so we had to be doing it late in the evening when they had to do it very early in the morning. But both schools made the commitment to do it. Stakeholders gained exposure to unfamiliar cultures using Facebook as a community of practice. So we also set up a Facebook page for them, and they used Facebook to share information about their cultures. So they posted cultural snapshots of life in the USA and Nepal, talked to each other, etc. Now, one thing that was really interesting during the Skype meeting was that they learned about, especially the US people, that there are different greetings around the world. So in Nepal, they all greeted the US students by saying namaste. And so Now the US people had to reply in Namaste also. So they had to now put their hands together and do that. So they learned about the cultural context of greetings being different. One of the things we agreed on was to do a project on water quality. And we developed a memorandum of understanding on how to conduct this project. Water is an issue in New Mexico where we live because we have, low, because we live in a high desert, water is always an issue, it's going to be an issue in the futures. We depend on the Rio Grande River that runs, but it cannot feed us water all the time. So we have different conservation methods. It's an issue environmental issue that students are learning about. Students, what they did was, we had to send some water testing kits to Nepal, and students tested water samples and shared findings through Facebook. So they went to the respective rivers, the Bagmati River in Nepal and the Rio Grande in the US. They tested the quality of the water and shared the findings on Facebook. Students, when they did this, discovered that rivers have cultural uses affecting water quality. So now for the US students, this was an issue that they hadn't really thought about before. All of a sudden, now there are religious practices that's happening in Nepal that is polluting the water. And so now they are, for the first time, they got this intercultural experience. So many of the skills that we tried to develop in this project, many of those outcomes were tied to 21st century skills. Understanding intercultural collaboration, understanding science, from another perspective, etc. Give me a minute. We presented this paper, we did an evaluation of this project and presented this paper at the American Evaluation Association conference in October last year in Denver. Now, this is a project that some of you in the audience know. I was here in 2007 working on the ADB funded notes project, and I was developing the tutor mentor program, and we did it in Moodle. And one of the activities we did was we did a collaborative learning activity where we had international e-mentors from the US working with the participants here, supporting them in inquiry-based learning. And so we had 3 forums where we had a case-based reasoning activity on solving the problem of street children in the city of Colombo. One group did an activity on solving the traffic problem, and the third group did an activity on solving the garbage problem. I can see that the garbage problem has been solved to a large extent ever since we did this activity. And at the conclusion of this collaborative learning activity, the groups had to present a report to the mayor of the city of Colombo. And so we introduced a social media tool, a wiki for report writing. Now Moodle had a wiki, but also some students had difficulty accessing the wiki in Moodle, so we moved them on to PBWorks. So a wiki is a great tool for report writing because we can see each other's previous documents and the history of the documents. Here's another example. I had to teach a dissertation proposal seminar at my university. The dissertation proposal seminar is about how to write your dissertation proposal. And we require our students to write the first 3 chapters of their dissertation for their proposal hearing. So we don't teach our doctoral courses online. We teach them face-to-face. And I had a few students, because of work commitments, had to be out of the state. So what I decided was to run this using social media. Now, if I had run this as an online program, I would have had to go through the university's online learning extended university system, which meant that I would have had to use Blackboard, sometimes a challenging system to use. However, because this was listed as a face-to-face class, I was able to use any media I wanted to support the learners. So I used Skype. We met by Skype certain weeks. I used a Dropbox. Dropbox is another great cloud-based device where you can store and organize your documents. And I gave the responsibility to students to really organize all the documents for our class so that they learned how to really organize and classify information. And then we also had some face-to-face meetings. Well, another proposition is that you could either use WordPress, which is a blogging software, or Vigio, or you could even use Blogger. Google Docs, Google Plus Suite is becoming very, very important these days, and Google Hangouts for video conferencing. So you can think about the kind of media that would support the people that you have in your class. I know at OUSL you do these face-to-face meetings for your classes. And so some of those face-to-face meetings actually can happen through social media. Okay, here I want to give you another example of a project where we developed a journal article using social media. This was an article we published in 2009 in the Educational Media International Journal. And we were asked to, I got an invitation from one of my colleagues who was doing a special issue to write an article on a theoretical framework for using social media. And so I assigned this project to my class, and because the project was about social media, what we did was we used social media to do this project. We utilized a wiki and several other social media, such as a community walk, mashups, Facebook, Flickr, and Blogger. We didn't use Second Life. Then after we had completed our requirement, we actually as a group sat down and reflected on the process that we went through. And we call this the community of practice coil model, or, it's like a coil. We felt that we went from one stage to the other. The first stage we thought was the context. Context was important to us because we were in a specific context dealing with specific issues in New Mexico. Context here would be different. Essentially, once we had figured out what the topic was and what the research questions were, we engaged in what we call discourse. So we were discussing with each other, and we were open to, I had students from different departments, so we were open to different points of view brought by students from other departments as well. Then we acted. Then we put into practice what we decided would be a good way to test out social media. Then each of us brought back our experiences and we reflected as a group. And then we reorganized our ideas. And finally, we decided that we actually influenced each other in the way we thought about the project because of the dialogue and the collaboration we have had. And so we felt that we achieved what is called socially mediated metacognition, because I could really reflect on my process of thinking and figure out how it was influenced by the others who interacted in that context. So here is also one model that you can use for engaging students in collaboration. What is important is that you really specify the context and what they need to achieve within that context. Okay, here is a list of social media for collaboration, and it goes from Facebook to RSS feeds. I will go through them quickly. There are issues about using Facebook for academics in some cases, and so therefore I would also recommend you really seriously look at Vigio, which is another very interesting social media site which helps you to organize your material. I have used Vigio for research purposes, and I think it's a really versatile platform. It creates context and community. Community Walk helps you to map your community, and it adds presence. So if you use Community Walk and you have students from all over the globe actually participating, then you are able to really show where your participants are. Mashups combines resources of various sites. Delicious records references built by your community members. Folksonomy tagging and social bookmarking or tag clouds, they help you organize knowledge. Blogs, most of you are familiar with blogging. You can use blogs as journals. they can record challenges, reflections of the group. Flickr, you can now use photos and keep them organized in Flickr. YouTube for videos. Wikis for collaborative writing, and RSS feeds keeps your community updated on changes that happen to websites. So you can use any combination of this depending on your students and the task. So what are some design considerations for developing virtual collaborative learning? So one of the things we have to consider is that most of our students are used to using social media for fun, for interacting with people. So we have to move them from social networking for fun to learning communities. Learning communities are those groups that are engaged in a specific goal, with the goal of learning. One thing that's important to consider is the concept called AIM, which is the amount of invested mental effort. Gabriel Solomon in 1984 actually talked about it when he was studying how people learn from television. If they don't invest a great deal of mental effort in the collaborative learning experience, they are not going to actually learn from it. Just like television, when you see a television program, you are relaxing. And so if you don't invest mental effort, it's difficult for you to learn from that program. You've got to teach people how to use social media for collaborative learning. The other concept is social presence. It's really important, especially if you have people that you don't ever see, to encourage a degree of social presence. Social presence is the degree to which a person is perceived as a real person in mediated communication. And so if you go online and do a search for this concept, you will find many articles talking about the need to create these kinds of presence. Dillenburg and Schneider also talked about group composition and identity. Think about how the group is composed and what kind of identity they have. Task features that rely on positive interdependence. Now, the reason that task features are important is that the students have to depend on each other to complete the task. If they can do the task by themselves, then there's no need for collaboration, right? So that's task independence, task interdependence. And then the type of communication media, what type of social media you plan to use. I want to give you an example from a project I was doing in Ghana. We are helping set up a physician assistant program for a university in Ghana using tablet technology. Now, one of the issues that we had to really talk about was how is the group composed. And when we were talking with our Ghanaian counterparts during the design process, what they said was, we want the groups to be composed as regional groups. And I had never ever thought of grouping my students regionally. And we were wondering why they wanted regional groups. The reason is that if one person's technology fails, they can always go to the person close to that person. So if a group is set up regionally, they can work together. Same concept actually runs in that Note project where we actually set up multimedia centers regionally so that people could come together region. So where there is lack of access to technology, regional grouping is a good concept. So group composition and identity is really important. Okay, I want to briefly discuss a design model that I have used to design practically all my online courses, and is also a model that I use when I design collaborative learning depending on whatever media I select to use. We call it the WISCOM model, and there are three aspects that we maintain is important to design this any online virtual learning environment. One is to really develop the community, to provide mentoring and learner support, and the other one is to help them innovate, engage in knowledge innovation. And we generally start with a case or a problem or issue, and have the students initially explore, share resources and perspectives, reflect and reorganize their thoughts, and negotiate and preserve their thoughts for others to use, and continue the cycle. So 4 steps in the cycle. is to experience a specific trigger, to engage in exploration, integrate findings, and reach a solution. So when you set up a collaborative group, that collaborative group has to go through a specific process to arrive at a conclusion. It's important you indicate to the group what needs to be solved or what needs to be resolved, and help them go through a process to achieve that. Strategies for designing collaboration using WISCOM, again, creating a learning community, mentoring, and learner support. Learner support is really important for those learners who really do need it. And there are different ways of supporting the learner. For me, mentoring is important because mentoring is not so much as being, as tutoring, telling students exactly what to do. Mentoring is about getting students to think on their own a little bit and try to achieve their own goals and supporting the student. Knowledge innovation means that it is important that any group that works together create their own knowledge and then understand and share that knowledge among the group. Really critical is assessment, how we assess collaborative learning. Assessment must reward collaboration, contribution to the community, and products developed within the community. So if your assessment actually matches collaboration, then students are more likely to engage in collaboration. Another way that you can conceive of your group is think of it in terms of collaboration circles. Some students may not be familiar with collaboration, so you can actually assign specific roles. So you can start with a question, and then you can have different roles. One student can be the investigator, one could be the highlighter, the connector, one an illustrator, synthesizer, another leader, facilitator, another can be the technical writer. I mean, even when you write a grant proposal, you have so many different roles that different people play, but they have to come together to develop a synthesis of that project. So one way to do group work is to also help students to understand different roles and play those different roles, especially if they are new to collaboration. I want to conclude with social media issues. There are some problems with using social media, and I know that some schools have banned using social media. I don't know, is Facebook banned in schools here? Is it? Okay, so I think certain sites are banned. So I have to talk a little bit about why. And the issue is privacy. That if you set up Facebook pages, what happens is those pages get connected to students' personal pages. And sometimes that can be an issue because students might share things that you don't want them to share. And there has been issues of bullying. And I think in Sri Lanka there were some cases of a suicide, I think. Was it in Sri Lanka? Yeah. Yes. So there are issues to be concerned about. My students have also been reluctant to use Facebook because of that. So one of the issues is keeping personal lives and academic lives separate. You don't want your classmates to know what you may be doing with another group of students. And Facebook tends to connect too many things. Another thing is that it can be a distracting influence. So you go to Facebook for your academic work, and then you connect to your social network, and you've forgotten your academic work. Many parents are worried about this. Time management. Students now have a time management. Actually, for adults, you can actually train them, in terms of these issues. Another thing is personnel to facilitate, monitor, and provide feedback. So if you're putting these groups online and they are working online, there has to be somebody who monitors them and provides feedback when they're on. The other one is the authenticity and accuracy of information that you get on these sites. And media literacy is a critical skill that we have to teach all our students, whether they are adults or young students, so that we can use this media effectively. I want to bring up these issues not to discourage you from using social media, because I think social media is great because they are free and you don't have to be connected to any system. I can set myself as an instructor anywhere and teach a group of people using social media. So we are no longer beholden to academic institutions to do that. We can do this on our own. So I hope you experiment with it and find really reward in using them. Also remember there are research projects. Facebook use in Sri Lanka or social media use in Sri Lanka for academic issues can be your next paper. I think Som Naidu talked to you about publishing, so I'm going to conclude with that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lani. I think that was a very exciting presentation, and I'm sure it's going to generate a lot of questions. And now it's open to the House for questions, comments, further discussions.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm representing Postgraduate Institute of Management, Colombo, PIM. We are using Moodle for the moment as a collaborative learning, especially with MBA 2015 batch. I learned about collaboration cycle. That's pretty fantastic, very exciting. As you correctly said, it's a student already became a creator. Mm-hmm. I mean, they uploaded things, they're sharing things. My only concern is not the student, other side. And what would be your advice on this regard, on academic?
You mean the academic side?
Academic, yes.
Yeah. So one of the issues that, one of the issues that has been brought up is the fact that students are ready, but not the faculty. Because faculty either don't have access or they don't want to spend time learning how to use social media. Now, if I showed that demographic I showed you about people using social media, I think, most probably faculty do use social media, because when I asked you the question, most of you raised your hands. So you're using social media for your personal. Now you have to go to the next step and really figure out how can I use it in my classes. So this is one of the things that we have to do. Now Moodle, most probably, do you have like a real-time communication system set up with Moodle too?
Yes.
What do you use?
2.7, it's equal to Facebook. It's the latest addition of Moodle.
Okay.
It's fantastic. It's a very, very dynamic system.
Right.
But if you look at it, it's like more on posting, because my student happen to be, people are working. I mean, during daytime, they are not accessing Moodle, of course.
Right.
But most of the time, the fascinating thing is they are sharing knowledge. And it's a forum for discussions. I mean,
right.
Within a day, to 15 to 50 students, they discuss about, like, for example, managing organization.
Right.
With somebody like Chamat Palipiti's discussion, we got the Chamat clip online, and we discussed what is the disruptive technology, what is happening all over the world, how we can, Mackenzie Insight with the Tom Peters. He's
right.
also online that time. We gave them 2 clips.
Right.
And 2 different perspectives, and we discuss about what is happening in the context of what we're learning with the Duff textbook in Sri Lanka. What is the idea of organization, managing organization in the light of disruptive technology. That was our forum started with,
right.
which went on nearly 15 to 20 people discuss on that.
Right.
It is not live, tell you. I mean, somebody there in the morning, somebody in the afternoon.
Right.
But end of the day, there is analogies we can take out. People are more willing to share.
Right.
And as you correctly mentioned, of course, collaboration cycle is not happening actually. It should be the ideal case. Hopefully, we can implement that.
Yeah. In this case, fine, because your adult learners that you are teaching to cannot actually access during the day. But could you try to do a synchronous session in the evening at 8 o'clock? Now, for my online classes, I have scheduled my synchronous sessions. For one class, I have from 7 to 8 in the evening and one from 7 to 9 in the evening. My design class requires more activity, so we have from 7 to 9. And of course, we use a program called Collaborate within Blackboard. And what I have noticed is that students who participate in the synchronous session actually do better in the class. Simply because every week they are up to date with what's going on. They don't tend to fall behind. Now, there are some students, there are also the personality types. The one student came and told me, he came to my office and he said, I want to talk to you and I want to let you know why I'm not participating in the synchronous web conferences, because I'm really an introverted personality. I don't do well with folks. I like online because I don't have to see them and work with them face to face. But I do, and he's a very good media guy. And he said, that's why I don't participate face to face, but I mean real time, but I watch every recording. And so I'm fine with that, as long as they can do that. So you could try that, because I think for certain learners, they need the real-time interaction. Certain learners do very well asynchronously, others need the real-time interaction. And what is interesting about the real-time interaction is that some students actually share stories that they may not share online. So I personally think that both media, both synchronous and asynchronous, have the benefits. So in terms of your discussion circle, one of the things you have to do is make very sure what the task is, what the group process, the group membership is going to be, and then help them think about the process that they need to go through to achieve that.
We have clearly defined what it's all about, but my only concern is now, our long-term plan is how we can get the brick and mortar 50% and online 50% like a collaborative. That is a long shot. Yeah. But my only concern is that how is going to be the evaluation, because I was the member of IVCT MOOC, Massive Online Open Course.
Right.
My evaluation was peer evaluation. I mean, my assignment went with the 5 peers and gave me pretty good numbers somehow. It not all the time. I mean, I got very bad ranking on some other course. With edX, with neuroscience, with Stanford. Okay. I had a problem with that. But my only concern is how we can adapt for PIM on evaluation. Your advice on this, I mean, going to matter a lot.
Right. Evaluation and assessment is another huge topic. But one of the things that I personally feel is that if you're an instructor, if it's set up as the instructor also has to provide feedback. Now, the MOOC is a totally massive online open course is a totally different ball game, because you have 45,000 students, and it's impossible to do that. But in terms of actual feedback, peer feedback is a good thing if you train your peers. Now, I have trained my students to give feedback. At the beginning, they are not pretty good. But then, by giving feedback on their assessments, I have managed to improve their assessment. But you can also, one of the things that I do in my classes is to have them develop group projects. They have to study what's happening in my class and then apply it to a real world problem. That Nepal project I talked about was a real world problem, because we wanted to encourage cross-cultural communication between students, because US students rarely get the opportunity to really do projects with students from other countries. So we wanted to encourage that. And so the Ghana project started as a class project in my group when the physician from Ghana asked me for help in setting up his program at a distance. And I said, I don't have time, but my students most probably will be able to do it. They took on the project, they wrote a grant, got a grant from Grand Challenges Canada, and implemented the project. So my students design, Ghana gives us the content, because we want the content to be owned by the Ghanaians. That's their content. And medicine in Ghana is really different from medicine in the US. Like, for example, this cross-cultural communication process is also very important. Like, even for your management, they need to know what's happening globally, to understand. So you can encourage that kind of collaboration, etc., using these platforms. In terms of assessment, I have what are called rubrics that I have developed for assessing skill levels. So I point out, these are the skills I want in my projects. These are the skills I'm looking for. And so show me what your skills are. This is how I actually grade groups. The group project itself, the conclusion of the group project, the group process, the group product, all of it gets the same grade, whether a student has participated or not. Because sometimes it's difficult to say exactly what the percentage is. Then I have what is called a participation evaluation form, which also has certain points assigned. In the participation evaluation form, all the group members say what their contribution to the group project was and what each other's contribution was. And finally, they have to say which percentage each person put into the group project. So when I look at each member's group evaluation forms, I know that one person has got only 10%, which means that the person didn't do anything at all, and the group credited the project. So therefore, that person loses participation points, not group project points, because I want the group to work together to develop the synthesis. So there are many ways that you can actually do assessment. Personally, for me, I think we need to really engage our students doing authentic, real-world projects so that they solve the problems of the world, and they start doing this in our classes. Because as I said, knowledge is no longer the commodity we seek. We need people to be able to solve issues. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes. It's not a question, just a comment. Thank you for very informative and nice presentation, Dani. Yeah, just want to say that what you were saying just now about this peer assessment, and actually just now we are running an OER-based e-learning course for academics.
Okay.
So many senior academics. So there we are using this peer assessment, these strategies, but using Moodle, of course.
Yeah.
But now while I was listening to this, I was thinking how we can include social media into it. So I think they all get that experience of this peer assessment, which is through group discussions, where you are contributing to create knowledge. I think they are experiencing it very well. I just want to say that just now we are in the process of developing an OER policy at OUSL. One of the tasks is for the group members to give recommendations to the institution to create a policy. So now it's amazing to see the amount of ideas that have been collated, which should be very useful for the university. So I'm thinking of presenting it to the committee on policy. So I just want to say that what you say is really so effective. We are experiencing it just now.
That's right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that excellent example of using social media. Because the issue of MOOCs came up. I wasn't going to address it because it's another huge topic, and I know Ishan is planning a MOOC talk pretty soon. What I have experienced is usually I'm in about 3 or 4 MOOCs at the same time. I'm there mostly to see the techniques these people are using to really enhance learning. And I have to tell you, from the beginning, MOOCs have developed. They are trying to do collaborative learning. What they do is they usually push people into different platforms, like social media platforms for collaborative learning. Because I was in a MOOC, it was on distance learning, and my students said, here's a MOOC on distance learning, let's all get in. And they invited me, and we were asked to form groups in the MOOC. So we all signed up for the MOOC on distance learning. It was from Georgia Tech University. And then my students and we all signed up for the same group. We were going to be in the same group, sort of regional. And then 4 days after, the MOOC crashed. The MOOC could not accommodate 35,000 people who were enrolled getting into groups. So what they've done is they've learned from this. So they don't have the groups formed within the MOOC. They push them off onto social media sites. See the importance of social media. They either create Facebooks, videos, or whatever. So what MOOCs have had a hard time doing right now to call it an educational experience is this interactive, collaborative learning piece. And they are actually looking at very good techniques for doing this. In fact, the Guardian newspaper in UK asked me to talk about MOOCs. And I talked about the different ways that you can actually develop collaborative learning spaces for MOOCs. And one of those concepts, actually they have done this in the one developing country. They actually set up, Coursera actually set up local community centers in different countries where they had students, so that those centers, the students would get together in those centers. So another way that I really thought was a pretty good way for the interactive element to come up with this, there was a MOOC from edX from Harvard, and it was on religion. And they had 2 graduate assistants who looked at all the discussion postings that came along, and then they summarized the discussion postings, brought out the main issues that people have discussed. So within 1 week, these 2 students were looking at so many messages, summarized, synthesized, and then did a little YouTube video explaining questions that, answers to questions, a summary and synthesis of all the new ideas that were presented, which was done fabulously. So I think that was really good, So they got feedback not from the instructor but from, the graduate assistants. So there are different ways to do this. And I think all we have to do is to be a little bit creative, because now we have the media to do anything that we want. So I think even MOOCs, my issue with MOOCs has been that MOOCs have tended to promote a certain point of view. So far, the point of view has come from the Western world. And it is time for MOOCs to be generated from the Asian context, the Latin American context, elsewhere. In fact, one of my colleagues is going to do his sabbatical with me next year, and he wants to develop a MOOC. He's from Brazil, and we want to develop a MOOC that also is relevant to students in other cultures. And I don't know how relevant MOOCs in the US are to students here. Sometimes basic knowledge might be, but social issues, maybe not. So anything else? Any question you may have?
Any comments, anything you want to share?
I want to ask you a question now. How many of you have participated in MOOCs? How many? Have you completed the certificate?
Got a badge.
You got a badge? Digital badge, that's great. In what?
Swinburne University.
One of the courses presented by
Salmons, yeah.
Okay, great.
I can't remember the...
I did University, 4 courses actually. One is creative storytelling,
Okay.
critical thinking, and future farming on green environment.
Okay.
District. I got 2 certificates. I paid $99 end of the day for both. Get the certificate. Of course, otherwise I'm getting the loyalty badge. Of course, it is there.
Yeah.
But I want to have physical thing. Traditionally, I like to touch and see that. That, of course, I pay for that. And I'm on the 2 MOOCs on Harvard and Stanford about innovation in neurology.
Very good.
Yeah, that's
Very good. That's because here is a free resource. We only have to spend some time. And one thing I've learned about MOOCs is that once you enroll at the time the course is open, it's actually open for quite some time after the period ends. So if you haven't had time to go through and look through things, you can always go back later. And these MOOCs are also really now becoming a little bit more adaptable to the world, because like they would have both a Spanish and English translation or a Portuguese. In fact, we have a professor in global business offering courses, offering MOOCs, and I'm working on a simulation project with my Brazilian colleagues, and they have developed this business simulation, and we are going to now integrate it into the MOOC that he's teaching. And because the people who sign up for the badge or the certificate are only about 30 now, so 30,000 will sign up for the entire MOOC, but only 30 actually pay. So we will make it only available for those 30, the simulated learning environment. So there are, one thing is everybody talks about dropout from MOOCs. That's because people actually enroll for different reasons, not really to complete the course,
Actually, it's very fascinating. Like it is a self-phase. Actually, if you see the Stanford one about, especially on the neuroscience and neurology, that you can take. I mean, it's nearly in their depository. It will remain more than 1 to 2 years.
Right.
And you take your own time, and it's 2 hours per week, something like that, and you can do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like good for general knowledge. I mean, continuous learning, all of that. Another concept that has really is that people have started working on is called a doc. A doc is a distributed open online course. And how they do this, it's a little bit different to the MOOC model, where the MOOC model actually takes a prominent instructor and distributes the course. In the doc, people, expert instructors from different institutions get together to develop the course, and they teach it in their respective institutions and make it more relevant to their own students, so that there is buy-in from more than one institution developing the course. So there are different models for MOOCs as well, which are interesting to explore.
Because I mentioned there's something like that which SEMCA developed, getting people from different countries, so Sri Lanka, Malaysia, India. So it's what you said just like.
Right.
So Malaysia is offering it going to offer it as MOOC, but we didn't offer it as a MOOC yet, but it could be our MOOC.
Yes.
Because now the first module is completed, then participants were awarded a badge. They got a Mozilla badge.
Okay, good.
To complete it.
Okay,
so it's
great.
Almost like a MOOC.
Okay. See, there is a lot of innovation, excitement going on at the Open University. Any other institution? Are you doing some of this work using technology? Actually, the people who innovate using technology are people who are at the grassroots level. People sometimes from leaders in organizations, you don't get the message because they themselves might not use it. It's people who are the worker bees in an organization who really are the innovators using technology. And I think one really good bit of advice to any administrator is to encourage those people who are experimenting with new technologies, because sometimes, even when I started teaching online for the first time, I taught through an audio graphic system, audio and graphics. And it was a huge challenge because we had implemented the system and we didn't have really a great learner support system. It was a system to bypass having to fly in one of those small planes to teach a class. But from those early experiences, I learned a lot about myself and how to teach and how to engage students and get them excited in learning. And so, whether the institution supports me or not, I would go and do my thing. And finally, you get recognition from the institution for doing it. But it takes a while. So you have to really go ahead and do it. So I would encourage all of you to take up this task of innovation in your own organizations. You may not get the support at first, but one day, eventually, they will recognize you for what you did.
I think we have to stop now, and I think that was a great ending note for all of us. Once again, I would like to thank Lani very much for a very interesting and I would say inspirational talk that I'm sure we can take forward a lot of her suggestions. And I think we need to hand over to Ishan, to Jayantha now.
Yes, Professor Lani Gunawardena, distinguished professor of the University of New Mexico, and Professor Kamala Gunaratne, Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, all the deans, distinguished invitees, friends. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Lani Gunawardena, a frequent visitor to our OUSL, especially to the Center for Education, Technology and Media. So thank you very much, Professor Lani Gunawardena, for very exciting lecture and also a very exciting discussion, sharing your first-hand information, first-hand experience with us. So role of a university is mainly generation of knowledge and also disseminating knowledge. And here actually that we made a platform to share experience and knowledge not only from local context and also from international experiences. And also I would like to thank all the staff members of the CETME, Center for Education, Technology and Media, and also the Division of International Academic Relations. Because these two institutions, the divisions, are organizing this lecture series. So first, a distinguished lecture we conducted 19th of November, 19th of December last year, 1 month back, and now you can, it is in our website, OUSL website. You can download it, and also it is in YouTube that again you can watch. This lecture also streamed live, so the people from the whole world could watch the lecture, and also digitally recorded, then it will be available in our website and also in the YouTube. So again, I must thank all the members, all the participants, and also especially for Professor Lani Gunawardena. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Lani, for a very interesting lecture. I'm on social media a lot, Facebook and LinkedIn, so I'm covered there. We see a lot of excitement about MOOCs. I have a good announcement regarding that. The next lecture, the third lecture of the Distinguished Lecture Series, will be held on the 2nd of February 2015. The speaker will be Professor Kazu Yamaji from the National Institute of Informatics in Japan. He will be speaking on metadata federation for educational material. So that's going to be an interesting one. And exactly a few days later on, we have another Japanese professor, Professor Tsuno Yamada from the Open University of Japan, who will be speaking on MOOCs, hopefully. He's the chairman of the JMOOC Foundation, the Japan MOOC Foundation, and he has first-hand experience in running Asian MOOCs. So I hope all of you will be interested in joining these two lectures as well in the first week of February. And I hope you tell your colleagues and your friends. If they've missed the lecture, then it's always available on our website. So with that, I bid you all good evening, and thank you very much.